So after understanding the introduction of the president and like his qualifications and like how like what is his term of office and other things, so later we have even discussed about the impeachment of president. So after this impeachment of president, let us go into the very important topic called the powers of president. So as you can see in this slide, so the president of India enjoys a wide variety of powers. So among that there are executive powers, diplomatic powers, military powers, emergency powers, financial powers, pardoning powers, judicial powers and legislative powers. See, based on the duties, there were many wide variety of powers vested with the president of India. So let us discuss in detail, one by one all the different powers. So the president, in his powers, let us discuss about the executive powers of the president. So in the executive powers of the president, he acts as an executive head of the state. That means, so the central government will issue all the executive orders in the name of the president, and the officials who implement in the executive level at various stages about the orders of the government will all act as a subordinate for the president. So the president will act as the highest executive head for the country, and all the orders issued by the central government will be in the name of the president. So the executive power of the president will be in this manner, and all the officials who implement these executive orders will also be subordinates. That means they are of lower cadre than the president. So by giving the status of highest executive head, all the other officials of the country will become the subordinates for president. And the president of India will exercise his executive powers, so mostly by the appointments he do. So various appointments will be done by the president. So he will be appointing the prime minister of the country. So through elections, the majority party will be coming into the government, and such party will have their leader, and that leader will later become the prime minister candidate, and such prime minister will be appointed by president. So he will make the oath taking process of the prime minister. And also there is council of ministers who are helpful for the prime minister. All such council of ministers selected by the prime minister will be appointed by presidents. So the prime minister will advise so and so names or particular people as council of ministers, and the president will make them to take oath or by appointing them. And he also appoints the attorney general of India. So attorney general is nothing but the highest legal advisor for the central government. Such person is also appointed by the president. And he also appoints the comptroller and auditor general, who is like the auditing person for the central and state governments. Though the expenditure did by central and state governments will be audited by the comptroller and auditor general, and such a man is also appointed by the president. He also appoints the chairman and members of Union Public Service Commission. So Union Public Service Commission is a constitutional body which conducts competitive exams throughout India to select all India civil servants. So such chairman and other members required for such commissions will be appointed by the president. And the president also appoints the members of planning commission. See, earlier there was planning commission where the 5 years plans were implemented, and there will be a chairman and members, and such members will be appointed by president. Nowadays we don't have planning commission. In the place of planning commission we got Niti Aayog, which does similarly the job of planning commission, like planning things for the country, what are the goals of the country for the next 5 years, similar way. And he also appoints the chairman and members of planning commission, and he also appoints the governors of the various states. So each state will have a governor, and such governors will be appointed by president. So similar by taking the advice from prime minister. He also appoints the chief justice and judges of Supreme Court and High Court, and the lieutenant governors of union territories based on the advice of the prime minister and his council of ministers. So, and he also takes over certain during certain situations. The presidents will take over, the administration of the state governments. When a constitutional machinery fails in state governments, he takes over as a head of the state government, and he runs the state administration through the governor. And he also acts as a head of the union territories and border areas of the country. So, after studying the executive powers of the president, let us proceed towards his diplomatic powers. So, what do you mean by diplomatic powers, and when does this kind of powers will be executed by the president? See, diplomacy is nothing but who is somebody who is very good at handling situations between two people properly, so that it gets resolved or it gets solved. So the president of India will act as a this middle person between India and other countries, so that it helps to build up a good relation between both countries. So in such process of executing powers, the president plays a very important role. So let us see what are his diplomatic powers. So he appoints ambassadors to other countries. So in modern world, so each country will have an ambassador, or that means a messenger of its own country in other countries. For example, if you take India and United States, so an ambassador of India will stay in United States, and he will be mediating the relations between India and United States at the root executive level. So such ambassadors were appointed by the President of India, and these people will be generally having all India services who are qualified, like Indian Foreign Service and all. So they'll be posted as ambassadors in other countries. And the President of India also receives ambassadors, diplomatic envoys from other countries. So here the ambassadors from other countries, like sometimes the other countries, to talk with the Indian government, they may send some high level people for talks, and they are referred as ambassadors. And he will be, the President of India will be the person who will be receiving such high level ambassadors from other countries. And also these envoys from other countries. Envoys means like say messengers. So diplomatic envoys, that means they wanted to have a good relation with India. They wanted to visit India, and they wanted to build good relations with India. And such people will be sent by other countries, and all such people will be received and will be engaged in talks and other things by the president. And all the treaties and agreements are made in his name. So if India signs any agreement with other countries, all such agreements or treaties will be named after the president. And the president also represents India in international conferences. Suppose there will be there will be various conferences held on various topics, various issues, and all such issues and conferences will be presided from on behalf of India. The president will represent. And you can see in the picture President Ramnath Kovind inviting the presidents of other countries or the prime minister of other countries. Also he was witnessing the signatures between two different countries. It is named, the diplomatic relations or agreements are made in the name of president, so that you can see in the slide for better understanding. So after understanding the diplomatic powers of the president, so let us proceed towards the military powers of the president. See, the military powers of the president doesn't mean that he directly controls all the armies, and he will be the directly he will be the most active person in taking control of the armies. So it is not like that. He acts like a headman for all the armies. So like he's considered as the supreme commander of the armed forces of India, or the defense services of India. So you all know that the defense services of India are categorized into army, air force and navy. So the president executes his military powers by appointing the chiefs of all these three wings of the armed forces, like the army, the navy and the air force. So these three wings will have a separate head, and each head will be appointed by the President of India, and he himself will act as the supreme commander of all the armed forces. The President also declares war and peace on the advice of Council of Ministers. For example, if there is a situation which is making the country to go for a war, then the government at the central level will take a decision on it, and they will advise the president in the declaration of a war or ending of the war, and making some peace treaties between countries who are participating in war. So all such things will be mediated through the President of India. So the President of India declares war and peace on the advice of Council of Ministers. Also, he himself will act as a supreme commander of armed forces, and he appoints the heads of all the three wings of armed forces. Thus, the president will execute military powers, but not like he himself is a directly he doesn't go into action with the military affairs and all, but he will be executing his powers in the just discussed. So let us now try to understand the legislative powers of the president. So you all know that president is part of the parliament. So like he will not involve directly in the lawmaking process, but in a different way he is part of the parliament. And let us see in what way he executes his legislative powers. So here the messages to Parliament. The President has power to send messages to either houses of Parliament on any matter. So that means, so if there are some bills sent by the both houses of Parliament to President, he has the power to send messages to Parliament based on such pending bills or many such issues. So if he wants to convey anything to the Parliament, he can directly send a message to both houses. And also, President is the person who summons, that means who will issue an order for the beginning of parliament session, and prorogue, that means ending the sessions of parliament. So you all know that the parliament meets thrice a year, 3 times a year for budgetary and winter session and so monsoon session. So whenever a session has to begin, the president will receive timely advice from the prime minister and his council, and later he will issue orders for the beginning of the parliament. That such issue of order is called summon. And the president also prorogues the sessions. Suppose if the budget thing is finished, suppose it runs for 1 month or 2 months, then the session will end, and that ending is done by the president. He will issue orders that the budget session is going to end, and he also take care that there should not be a gap of more than 6 months between two sessions. So as the beginning and ending of each session is based on the orders issued by president, he makes sure that the parliament shall meet with a gap of not more than 6 months. Also, the president has a legislative power of dissolving the Lok Sabha, not Rajya Sabha here. See, when does the president can dissolve Lok Sabha? So when the government is voted out of parliament by no confidence motion, then the government is said to be dissolved, and such dissolving is done by the president. And the president also, but he cannot dissolve Rajya Sabha. As you all know that Rajya Sabha is a permanent house, he can only dissolve Lok Sabha. The president also exercises his legislative powers by addressing joint sessions of parliament of first session of each general election. Suppose every 5 years we have general elections. So after the elections are finished, the new government will form. And this government, before entering into the functioning, the both houses of parliament should meet. And such a joint session of parliament is addressed by the president. And during as I have told you that there are 3 sessions of the government, each session the president will begin with his speech, and in his speech the president will be explaining about the internal and external policies of the government. So the president not only addresses the both houses of the parliament in a joint sitting during the first session of after a fresh general election, but also every session it is begin with his speech by a joint session. So thus the president executes his legislative power with related to the parliament house. So in continuation of the legislative powers of the president of India, so let us see in what other ways he uses his legislative powers, or how he exercises his legislative powers. So to the both houses of parliament, so there is a legislative power still vested with the president. Like, he nominates 12 members to Rajya Sabha from among the men of learning in literature, science and art and social service. So that means the president will be nominating 12 members to Rajya Sabha, which is a permanent house. So these 12 members will be from various sectors. They are very much good at their own area, like sports, you take science, art, and from many areas. And he will be nominating these 12 members to Rajya Sabha because he considers that so people from such different areas will also contribute to better lawmaking process. So he exercises his legislative powers by nominating 12 members to Rajya Sabha and 2 Anglo-Indians to Lok Sabha if they are not represented properly through election. So he may also nominate 2 Anglo-Indians to Lok Sabha. Anglo-Indians, as we have discussed in our previous chapter, they have origins of both England and India. And president exercises his legislative power in a very significant manner by signing the bills passed by parliament. So the parliament will pass the bills, and all the bills which are passed in such a way will reach to the president's office, and the president will give his signature. Only after his signature any bill can become a law. So his assent to bills is very important. It is one of his important legislative power. So no bill can become a law without the signature of the president. So that is, his assent is compulsory. That means his acceptancy and signature is very much compulsory. And when both houses pass a bill, so generally it will be sent to the president. And once the bill reaches to the president office, the president may give his acceptance to bill by signing the bill, or he may withhold the bill. That means he may not say any reply or answer to both houses of parliament, and he can keep the bill in his office itself, so without replying. That is in one way he can exercise his legislative power with the bill. Also, he may send it back with certain recommendations. So if the president feels that there must be some additions or deletions with the bill, then he can recommend such things, and he can send that bill back to both houses of parliament. Usually the practice is the parliament will go through the recommendations made by president, and they will try to include those recommendations. But sometimes the parliament, if it sends back the same bill again to the president has to sign. So there is no authority for president to say no for such second time sent bills by parliament. So you can see in the slide, the bills after the signature of President of India will become law, and it will be released like the Gazette of India. So you can see the original bill which has got assent by the president in the slide. So in continuing with the legislative powers of the president, let us see what is his role in issuing ordinances. So what is this ordinance? Ordinance is an urgent law declared by president when parliament is not in session. For example, there are situations in country where the government needs to make an urgent law, and moreover the government will make laws in parliament, but the parliament is not in session, but there is a condition for the government to make law. So at this kind of situation, a constitutional provision called ordinance can be used by governments. So such ordinances will be issued by the President of India, so which will be sent generally from the government. So the government, in making its urgent laws, will issue ordinances through the president, and hence these ordinances can be called as urgent laws, and the president can issue such ordinances. And so when can he issue such ordinances? So when there are conditions in country where the parliament is not in session, and there is a situation where the government needs to make a law. In such conditions, and also there is one more important condition called if the president is satisfied. So what do you mean by the president's satisfaction, or to the pleasure of the president? What do you mean by this word, the satisfaction of the president? See, the satisfaction of the president doesn't mean that his personal choice should be implemented, or his personal choice can be, reflecting in the bills, or the ordinance. So it is not that way. Whenever an ordinance is issued by the government, if that ordinance fulfills all the constitutional provisions, then the president can be satisfied. So the word satisfied doesn't mean that it is his personal thing, that he feels personally satisfied and no, then he gives ordinance. Not like that. So here satisfied means that ordinance which is prepared by the government fulfills all the constitutional provisions. That reflects the satisfaction of the president. And when the parliament is not in session is another condition also. And when such ordinances are passed, they must be approved when the parliament meets again. And if it is not approved by parliament within 6 weeks, then such ordinances will be lapsed, or they stop functioning automatically. And these ordinances lapse if it is replaced by an act of parliament. So when the ordinance is in operation and then the parliament meets, instead of continuing that ordinance, the parliament can make a new law. In such situations, the new law made by parliament will prevail instead of the ordinance which is in operation. And so this ordinance, like, suppose this is about the promulgation of ordinances by the president. And the president also gives his approval to some state bills. That means generally at state level the bills are approved by the governor. But in certain cases regarding a state bill, the president will also give his approval. At that point of time, the governor will recommend such bills by reserving them. For example, if the powers of the high court are there, so such powers are to be decided, things are to be decided by a higher executive. So there the governor will reserve such bills and he will send for the approval of president. So the president may recommend certain changes to it, or he may approve as it is. So in such cases, the president will even work for the state bills. Also formation of new states. So generally the creation and demarking of new states is all in the hands of the central government. So before doing such creation or demarking of new states, the government has to seek the president's approval in advance. Such bills have to be kept in advance with the president, and later they can pass and now they can go for approval for the president again.